Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this evening's meeting. My name is Jose Alpuche. I'm your Vice President for Industry. I'm very much encouraged by the turnout this evening. I think it's an absolute demonstration of democracy within the chamber. I will not say much except to ask that we please stand for the national anthem. Thank you, Reverend Smarling. Please have a seat and be relaxed. I now call on Ms. Kay Menzies, our president, to give us her welcome remarks.
Good evening, Senator Hulse, past presidents, and fellow members. We gather this evening to complete a process begun in this room 2 weeks ago. On the 1st of July, those of you who attended that meeting expressed your concerns and contributed to the contents of a resolution intended to address them. The wording of that resolution was put together and approved by majority vote of those present at the second meeting last week on 6th July. This evening, you will vote whether or not to accept the resolution for forwarding to our government. The summation I've just given of it may seem like a fairly straightforward process, and it has been. But it has also been an educational one for us. For one thing, along the way, we've made the sad discovery that while the concept of freedom of speech exists in theory, in reality, the only free speech we have is the freedom to agree unreservedly with policy. We at the Chamber have been accused of partisanship, of having ideological blinders, of being bought and paid for, of many other things besides. I think somewhere in there that it was even suggested that we haven't enough brains to put together our own documents internally. In all of this, the team at the Chamber, both Executive Council and Secretariat, has weathered the insults stoically and have remained professional and committed throughout all of it. The fact that the debate became more about character assassination than about discussing the issue even provided for moments of humor. I take this opportunity to commend the members of the team, both Executive Council and Secretariat, for their resilience, dedication, and above it all, maturity. And I thank and commend each and every one of you members who have contributed to the process of Chamber representation, including by your presence here tonight, and I encourage you to continue doing so beyond tonight. However the vote for the resolution turns out tonight, please keep this one thing in mind. The Chamber exists to defend the rights and interests of the private sector and to do what it can to create the conditions that lead to an economy that we hope will one day allow every Belizean the chance at a proper home, a safe environment, a good education, in short, a quality of life that would make us the envy of other countries. This can be done, but it can only be done when we first admit honestly that we have a problem and then agree to work together as equal and willing partners able to freely discuss, debate, agree, and disagree in fixing that problem and making our country exactly what we know she can be. Without the freedom of debate, if the conversation is only going to consist of playground insults, this will continue to be difficult. We hope that from here we can move on to a reasonable, productive discussion aimed at resolving the issues that hold back our development. Thank you for coming tonight to exercise your democratic right without fear, favor, or insult, to vote on this resolution as you see fit, and we, as always, look forward to continue serving you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam President. According to the agenda, it's now my job to read the resolution. I trust that everybody have copies of it. Is that the case, or anybody require copies? So let me go ahead. It says resolution adopted 6 July 2011 for ratification by special general meeting 15th July 2011. Be it resolved that the members of the Belize Chamber of Commerce and Industry, at an emergency meeting held at the Whitfield Tower on July 6, 2011, to discuss the Chamber's position as regards the current state of the business climate in Belize, the method of government of Belize, acquisition of private property, and the adherence to the rule of law. Now, therefore, the Chamber hereby resolves as follows. 1. That as a matter of overriding national importance and interest, the Chamber calls on the government to, subparagraph 1, uphold and obey the rule of law in all respects as declared by the courts of law, in all judgments and otherwise, in accordance with the Constitution of Belize. 2. Desist from taking any action that offends the principle of separation of powers and our democratic institution enshrined and entrenched in our Constitution. Expressly taking into account that no person or entity has a more imperative obligation to obey the law than those who make the law. Paragraph 2. That as a matter of overriding national importance and interest, the Chamber calls on the National Assembly, subject to the provisions of our Constitution, to act within the scope of its legislative authority to make laws solely for the peace, order, and good governance of Belize. Paragraph 3. Without prejudice to the generality of the foregoing, that in the interest of fostering economic growth and the social well-being of Belize, to seek to restore a favorable investment climate for local and foreign investors, and to otherwise enable the private sector to function without fear or favor, in partnership, not in conflict with the public sector. The Chamber calls on the Government and National Assembly to refrain from taking any action, whether executive or legislatively, to deprive or otherwise infringe fundamental rights and freedoms entrenched in our Constitution, including but not limited to freedom from arbitrary deprivation of private property, but instead protect the fundamental rights and freedom of each and everyone in Belize. Paragraph 4. That further and in addition thereto, as regards the issue of the compulsory acquisition of private property, contracts or rights by the government, the Chamber calls for certain conditions and procedures to apply, being in particular but not limited to the following. Subpara 1. The purpose of the acquisition must not only be stated and clear, but must be the real, genuine, and true intention of the acquisition. 2. The acquisition must not be discriminatory in nature. 3. Prompt, adequate, and effective compensation must be determined and paid within 1 year from the date of acquisition, unless challenged in the courts of law. 4. The acquisition must be proportional to the intended purpose. 5. Any resale or redistribution to private entities must be in the spirit of the original intended purpose of the acquisition. 6. Those to be deprived of their property by the government must have a reasonable and fair opportunity to be heard prior to compulsory acquisition. 7. Within reason, all opportunities for a negotiated settlement or alternative options must be explored between both parties prior to compulsory acquisition. 8. In order to establish one's right or interest to determine whether the acquisition was duly carried out for a public purpose in accordance with applicable law and the Constitution, to determine the amount of reasonable compensation to which one may be entitled, and to substantively enforce one's right to such compensation, right of access to the courts must not in any way be deprived. And that's the end of the resolution. As stated in the resolution and as stated by the President, the resolution was adopted as is. We would normally go to a direct vote at this point, but we would want to, well, with the showing this evening, we would want to open the floor for comments, if there is any comments to be made, specific to the business on hand, and certainly to be brief and conducted with due respect. I now open the floor.
Who moved the resolution?
I was not here last week. I understand it was moved and, well, it was adopted last week.
I just wanted, who moved the resolution? Who moved and seconded it?
Do you know, okay?
Mr. Hilly, if you'd like, we can go and look it up. At the moment, I don't have that record with me, but it was moved and seconded.
It should be moved at this meeting, though.
Well, the content of the resolution was approved by majority vote last week. Right now, we haven't opened the floor yet. It would be a matter of moving to accept the resolution at this point.
That's what I'm saying, at this meeting, somebody should move for the resolution and second it at this meeting.
Okay, Mrs.
Okay.
Vasquez moves. Do we have a second? Mr. Mala seconds.
It seems you're not in a mood to speak this afternoon, so I guess we go directly to a vote. I trust everybody got their ballots when they came in. Okay. The auditor moving around the room with the box.
I realize.
Can I confirm that everybody's voted? Venetia, check outside that nobody's out there. Okay, well, we're closing the voting. The auditors will now do the counting. Could we have 2 volunteers to witness the counting? Although I must say that we have independent auditors with us this evening, but if you wish, 2 people could volunteer. I think everybody interested in happy hour, so I just want to get this over. To be abundantly clear, we've closed balloting already. Since I'm not a parliamentarian, somebody calling that we close the vote. Who moves that we close the vote? Second? Excuse me, members. Excuse me, I now call on Mr. Stephen Hall to give us the results, and I must thank them for their work this evening.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. From a total of 91 ballots, we counted 61 yes and 30 no's. Thank you.
As I said at the beginning, today's turnout really shows democracy at work within the chamber. I'm very happy for it. It's unfortunate that it takes a contentious issue to bring you all out. We certainly need to have you all out more when we're discussing the normal, yet very important issues of how we will take our beloved country forward. Without further ado, I call on Mr. Habet to give us the vote of thanks. Thank you very much.
Good evening. In keeping with the brief nature of everything so far, I'd just like to thank you all the members first for showing up. Really, it's you guys, that make up us, and we are here to execute your directives. And like Jose mentioned, we'd love to see you out more often, and we'd like to hear a lot more from you on a regular basis. Unlike some other organizations, we actually encourage lots of opinions, and we feel like we could pick the best if we have more options, right? I'd also like to thank the Secretariat, who does excellent work. These guys are very well researched, and I use the term guys loosely because they're mainly women, but they do their homework really, and they're a great bunch. It's good to work with them. Thanks again for coming out, and we hope to see you more often. And this is a democratic process. We can't always agree, but we can agree to disagree, and that's democracy. So thank you all again, and have a good night.
Just for the parliamentary sticklers, I have to say that the resolution was carried. Please, you're invited to our own happy hour.